For those of you that don't know me, my name is Dimitri. I am the CEO at MindStudio, and I'm really excited to again spend some time here speaking with David, who I'll let introduce himself here in a moment. Um, I've been extraordinarily inspired by what David has done at Advanced Local, the company that he works at. He's one of the most prolific AI agent developers in the world. And it's really been, again, I'll let him talk about it, but from our vantage point, it's been this incredible, transformation that he's done at this large, hundred some odd year old company that is has transformed it into a modern AI powered, behemoth. And so he has lots and lots of things to for us to learn from him. And so I'm gonna have David here introduce himself, and then I've got a bunch of questions. And so again, kind of the goal of this chat, and thanks so much, David, for making the time to do this. Again, you're extraordinarily busy, so like your time is insanely valuable. I so appreciate it, and I'm sure everybody here will benefit greatly from the lessons that you have to share. And so with that, welcome, David. Maybe David, you can give us a little bit about yourself, Advanced Local, like give us the 5 minute spiel without all the details on like the stuff you're doing, but like you, Advanced Local and stuff like that. Okay.
Sure. Well, and thank you for having me. So my name is David Cohn. Again, I'll give a very brief background on myself. I started off actually as a journalist, technology reporter, and then moved from the sort of reporting side to the product side. So I have worked with news organizations across the country over the years and done startups all in sort of technology and media space. And the longest I've ever worked at any one place actually now is Advanced Local. I've worked at Advanced Local for 10 years now. Advanced Local is most people know it for the sister company, which is Condé Nast and the Condé Nast magazines. So that's like Vanity Fair, New Yorker, Wired, etc. They also own 11 local markets, news markets. So the New Jersey Star Ledger in New Jersey, the Cleveland Plain Times Dealer, the Oregonian in Portland, etc. And I work on the news side. And they own other properties, the American City Business Journals. I think I saw someone from ACBJ here. So if your local city, the San Francisco Business Journal, the Los Angeles Business Journal, etc. And I have worked with them on the research and development side of things for many years. And starting about maybe a little over 2 years now, I can't remember exactly, as generative AI, sort of hit the scene. Everyone was sort of like, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? I had been, studying and playing with AI to a certain degree, but as everybody knows, it sort of hit an inflection point when ChatGPT was released in October, I want to say 2 years ago. And so I sort of officially switched from being in a sort of small side part of the organization to now working with all of the local markets directly with those newsrooms to try and figure out how we can, level up their game with AI. And maybe I'll leave it there for now, but that's sort of, where I came across MindStudio and went from there.
Mm-hmm. I think it's been 3 years now, not 2 years since
Might be
ChatGPT came.
It's been very fast.
Yeah. Indeed, it's flown. And so your title there is Senior Director, Gen AI Innovation and Content and the Newsroom. That's a very long title.
It is very long.
Put that like on a business card.
Yeah. And it's funny, so I'm sort of head of generative AI and innovation for the newsrooms. We are just now hiring sort of my equivalent on what's called the DCR team, the direct consumer revenue team, and so think ad sales and business and stuff like that. I have been doing some stuff for them, but my main charge has been to make sure that the reporters and our editorial was sort of supercharged. But as you can imagine, there's like applications across every facet of the organization.
Hmm. And so if you, again, if you were kind of like to describe your role in your kind of strategy and day to day of that, like what, what would that be?
Sure. So I have focused on three main buckets. One is tools for reporters. And this is some of the stuff that like comes to mind really quickly when you're talking about AI, right? AI is really good at, for example, sort of input output transformation of things. And you can imagine with editorial, there's a lot of, here's my input, I need a headline. Here's my input, I need, copy editing. Here's my input, I need social, et cetera.
Hmm.
So tools for reporters is one bucket. Another bucket is experiences for the audience. So this is more forward-facing type experiences that we can produce. And then a third one is kind of rethinking data, what it means, if you think about news organizations, right, and all organizations, but I'm thinking of it from a news perspective, we deal in data, right? We are constantly creating stories, right? And within those stories, historically, right, this is sort of my international symbol for the article. And within an article, there's a lot of content, right? And historically, it's just there. But now, by taking an article and running it through an AI, we can actually extract content out of that and organize it, right? The example I use of this, just to go a little bit deeper and explain what I mean here, it's a little morbid, but I use obits as the example, right? If you think about every obituary ever written, they contain the following information: the name of the person deceased, their date of birth, their date of death, their survivors, and maybe funeral information, right? So 5 bits of information. And again, those are in the blob, but now running it through an AI can pull it out and turn that into JSON. And doing that for one obit is maybe, okay, right? But if you do that for 1,000 obits, now all of a sudden I can query and say, hey, I want to know all the people who've died in the last 6 months of a particular disease, maybe. Or, I can start to turn that into meaningful data for the news organization. So those are the three buckets that I tended to focus on. Obviously, there are other interesting projects that pull us out into other things, but that's where my head usually is.
Mhm. And before you were doing this Gen AI thing, and you've been there for 10 years, how would you describe kind of the role then? Like, what's changed with the Gen AI piece?
Oh, I mean, one is the speed at which I think we can try things.
Mhm.
Um, you know, I before that was on a whole other team, like an R&D team, and it was, skunkworks, classic skunkworks. And I mean, and it was an entire department. And we would build, maybe one thing every year or two, and try and like, I mean, we were trying to build startups within the organization essentially. Um, but if I look at my entire career, right? I code at like a second grade level. Like it's not really, I'm good enough to break anything you give me is kind of what I would tell people, right?
Mhm.
Um, if anything, again, I'm what you might call like a product manager and not even a technical product manager. And so often I would, want to work on projects, but essentially I would hit my hurdle. I would hit a point where it's like, well, I have to wait to get resources from a developer, from something to like make something happen. And that's no longer the case, right? We can go from idea to working, implemented product really fast. I mean, again, just last week, someone at a news organization, Mass Live in Massachusetts, was like, "Oh, we found the API for restaurant health inspections." Again, this is nerdy journalism stuff, but and they're like, "Can you do anything with that?" And I was like, "Yeah, I can do a bunch." This at that point, it's sort of like, I actually want more from them. Like, well, what do you want, right? And we have the back and forth, but the point is like, my head goes in 50 different directions now of what's possible. As to before, it would have been like, well, I'm going to need a developer, and I'll get back to
Mhm.
you.
Mhm. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, you can tackle orders of magnitude more projects because they're faster, easier. You can do them yourself, etc. And yeah, so with that, like obviously there's countless projects to do. Like who gets to pick the things that you're like building now, and like how does that kind of process work? Like where do ideas come from? What does the build sort of actually look like? Like what are you doing? What are, stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, I'll focus on the tools for reporters, and I actually see a colleague of mine in the audience. I'll call him out, Matt Dowling, who's also been learning MindStudio. I think he's actually going to be at the training this in a week or two. I can't remember when the dates,
Awesome. Yeah.
but so he's a good example. He comes to mind because it started off with me building again tools for reporters, and I have a background in journalism, but it's been a while, right? But once they were able to see how quickly I was able to pull things out, then it was sort of like, well, what is useful to you, right?
Mhm.
And 99% of the time, the best tools that I've built have been ideas from them, right? And funny enough, again, I will often take videos and show people what I'm doing in MindStudio. Kind of demystifying it. Sometimes I pretend like I'm a rocket scientist, but other times I show them like, actually, I'm just sort of pointing and clicking here. Um,
Mhm.
but uh, you know, the best ideas come from them. So we have meetings. We talk about what are your pain points? What are the types of stories that um, you know take up either a mental load. Sometimes I refer to it as it's not even so much that these stories that come out save time. It's often the mental tax that
Mhm.
these things take, right? Like an action that might only take you 10 minutes, but then there's like the 5 minutes to prepare for it, the like 5 minutes to 10 minutes afterwards, and then you get distracted, and then you know and now that's gone, right? Because it's automated. So it's not so much the 10 minutes of it actually took to write a story or do something. It's you know the buffer time, the mental tax. And so really it's just finding out what are their pain points, and then responding to them. And often, again, they are things that I wouldn't have thought of. And it's great. It's fantastic when those come across, and we build things for them.
Mhm. And so I assume you get lots and lots of ideas. Like, how do you choose how to sequence them? Like, are you doing like low-hanging fruit first, or some groups more
Yeah.
important than others, or do they have to like bribe you with some bourbon, or like?
It's a combination of the first two, right? Like it's a combination of low hanging fruit, or impact, right?
Mhm.
So like the Boston restaurants one is a good example. It was such low hanging fruit. I mean, I was able to, I don't know how long it took me, but we're talking maybe an hour or two, and now they've got that ongoing for life, right?
Mhm.
And so sometimes I'll just knock things out. But that is only for mass live, right? Like that, like the Boston restaurant inspections isn't going to help anybody else in the organization.
Mhm.
Versus, when the same organization actually came to me with an idea that I'm putting a lot more time and energy into to build out about bankruptcy notifications from Kroll. If you know Kroll, they
Mhm.
handle bankruptcies for you know 23andMe and all these big bankruptcies. So we've signed up, and that's via email. But I set up an email, so we're going to get emails whenever there's notifications on any big bankruptcy. And that's national, right? So that could be used by any of our markets. So whenever there's something that could be used by more than one market, obviously the impact is going to be bigger. I'm willing to put more time into it, even if it does take more time. So it is a combination. I mean, in truth, in terms of like there's me, I have one developer for certain types of projects, and then in the local newsrooms there are folks, again, like Matt, who I mentioned, who are picking it up locally, right? But that's it, right? Like it's I'm able to do a lot across the entire organization, and I want to train more folks in the local newsrooms, because again, they'll have a better sense of what is needed. But I'm trying to focus on things that will help the entire organization. So
Mhm.
rather than restaurant violations, the most popular workflow we have is something called editor's eyes. I'm not great at naming things, but and it's essentially like a copy editing kind of tool, right? Like you put in your first draft, it does spelling, it does grammar, it does writing feedback, it does information gaps. Where it gets really interesting, it will look at the story and it will evaluate the story on 5 criteria. How informative is the story? How I forget the exact, is it informative? Is it does it connect to the broader issues? Does it investigate an issue? And there's one other, and it gives you a 0 through 5 ranking. This is using something called work to be done. So like stories should be doing something for you. It should
Mhm.
inform, it should connect, it should investigate, etc. And then it will look at those rankings. And then the last thing that this editor's eyes does, it will come up with headlines for future stories that would be strong in areas where your story scored weak. So if you turned in a story and it said, "Oh, this is good, but it didn't do well on in terms of connecting it to issues in the community," here are future stories on this topic that would do, connect it to other issues. So that is something that is used by every market. It's, again, the most popular workflow that we have. In terms of setup, you can stop me if I'm going too long,
No,
but
this is perfect. Yeah, keep
um,
going. That's great.
so tools for reporters, typically there's like 3 or 4 big buckets. The one is what we call a toolkit for reporters, and we just built our own kind of like front end. It's behind an SSO, but in truth, it could be, I could imagine it being a MindStudio embed. But that's where the reporter comes in, and there's different categories, right? It's editing help, research help, and the research, is a whole other, thing. The affiliate team has their own sort of 5 or 6 workflows for the affiliate team. The social team has 5 or 6 workflows dedicated to them, helping taking a story we've done and give us a TikTok script. So there's different categories there. And again, it's constantly growing and evolving. So yeah, I'll
Do,
pause
do,
there.
do you have a recent count? Last time we talked, it was over 300. Is it like over 400 now?
Well, so in the toolkit, that bucket is probably, I think, 60.
Hmm.
Um, and then there's another bucket that I call cron jobs,
Hmm.
which are scheduled tasks, essentially.
Hmm.
And those are probably that there's probably 300 or 400 of just those
Hmm. Yeah, that
specifically.
makes sense.
And those are, they go out and they scrape sites, right? Local board meetings, everything from the local community college, their, news site. I mean, it's, anything that might be relevant. The reporters, again, are the ones that give me the list. That's one where I say, once one reporter did it, then they're like, oh, I want to do that for this area and that area, and I want to do it for this, and, food recalls and everything, right? So agents go out, the majority of them, and I see Lewis as well, Lewis C, he's helped build a lot of those with me.
Hmm.
They, the agents go out, look at the website, kind of compare it to the last time we looked at it. If it's the same as last time, nothing happens. If it's new, then it comes back and it says, here's the most recent update. And when we format it, and we'll even format it based off of what the reporter needs, right? This, again, Matt has done them for weather. And weather was sort of like not on my radar. And Matt was like, oh, I'll do this for weather. And he's done it for
Hmm.
weather for all of the other sites too. And it makes sense that, again, it was perfect that Matt did weather, as he like learned the tool, because I think he knew better than I did like what drives traffic and like what really helps, right? I was sort of being maybe a little highfalutin, and he was like, no, we're gonna do this for weather, and it's like it crushes, right? And when there's storms, right, he'll actually pump up the frequency, and pump it down when it's fine, right? So anyways, in terms of cron jobs, we're between 3 and 400. Last time I counted, it was over 300. It's been a little bit. We're probably approaching 400 of just those.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, look, this ability to monitor the world, whether you're monitoring competitors or you're monitoring for news, or a few months ago, I talked to a guy who's a day trader that monitors Google Trends for consumer sentiment, basically. Like he told me about Tesla, where he's got hundreds of keywords that he monitors Google Trends for and sees how they're changing over time. And keywords like, Tesla supply chain, Elon gone crazy, like things like that. And like the data is there.
Mhm.
If you do it manually, it doesn't make any sense. But if it's an agent doing it, well, then it does make sense. And it only like bugs him if there's like any kind of a meaningful trend there that he can trade on. The rest of the time, as you were mentioning earlier, this like ability not to have to think about something, like this freeing up
Is
of mental
huge.
effort, that's the biggest thing. Right?
Yeah.
Again, I don't think people quite understand that. We should probably spend more time on it. Just how valuable it is, not the time savings, but the mental effort savings. We all
Yeah.
run out of steam, and all this context switching is killing us all.
Yeah, and that's exactly, it's the context switching. I'll give you 2 examples, and they're at different ends of the spectrum, again, in terms of like highfalutin or like, but they both do, So court reporters, again, we have cron jobs in Pennsylvania, the court reporter in Pennsylvania, he, again, thinks I'm some rocket scientist and like, has changed his whole game because he would spend every morning going to the Superior Court, the Supreme Court, the Commonwealth, looking at all the opinions, right? And now those opinions, and you'd have to click into the PDF and figure out, and now that all just comes to them, right? I mean, we're talking an hour plus a day, every day saved.
Mhm.
Um, and it's like, hyper focused, and that is probably draining mentally in the act itself.
Mhm.
At the other end of the spectrum, I mean, even we have a cron job that just looks at X posts in a specific geographic region, right? And reporters are supposed to check Twitter and know what's going on in their beat on there. But as you can imagine, like not only is that like context switching, but then, I mean, it's hard once you're there, you're like, oh, and you're scrolling and, next thing you know, 15 minutes has gone by, you just got distracted, right? And you
Mhm.
didn't want to, you don't like it, but you do have to check Twitter. I mean, I think, or X, right? I think social media for some folks, for journalists, it's almost like an occupational hazard. You have to
Mhm.
engage with it, but it is designed as well to like suck you in. And
Mhm.
this way, you can get that report to you. You can see kind of, okay, what happened in, Lorain County in this case on X. What are the main things that people tweeted? What are the sentiments, et cetera? And you don't actually have to check yourself and like, get lost in it. So again, I think those are two ends of the spectrums, and really helpful, and can save. Again, I think there's a mental tax that is saved that's just as, if not more valuable than the time saved.
Yeah, absolutely. And on X, there's also you can get traumatized just by
Yeah,
opening it up. And so
yeah,
there's
exactly.
that kind of mental tax on it.
Exactly.
So that's transformative. Um, Yeah, again, we see this in lots of organizations that are using MindStudio. By the way, guys, when David says cron job, right, this in MindStudio speak, that's just
Scheduled.
the scheduled things. Cron
Yeah,
is an
sorry.
is an old Unix term. Well, it just shows our background. Like I too think of them as cron jobs, but you guys would know them as scheduled, triggers,
Yeah.
scheduled agents running. Um, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, so I want to dive more into some more of these use cases. I think they're fascinating and awesome. And again, common. They while you're doing them in newsrooms, they transfer to every other type of organization where we all, as information workers, kind of do the same thing. We pay attention to things. We keep in our minds that we have to check something, or we have to like take things out of like some system and like think about them, and then get some more information, kind of integrate it and like transform it and put it in some other system. Like it doesn't matter what the company does. If it uses computers and it's got knowledge workers, it's all kind of the same thing. And so like that's why I'm so excited for everybody to hear what you're doing, because you've got this like huge scale of this. You're extraordinarily creative. And this is what I actually kind of want to dive into here in a second. Um, and like all of this is like super relevant to everybody here. But before we go there, I want to spend some more time on again a bit of your story of coming out of this, like I think you said like sidearm or something like that of the
Mhm.
organization, and kind of going up in the company, kind of like in a sense, it's a career move, it's a career progression, and maybe if you can share any details of like how did that happen? Did people see you doing stuff and then say, hey, you're wasting your time here in the bowels here, come up here? Or is it like any of that stuff? I'm sure everybody would be interested in.
It is exactly what you just sort of said. With a little bit of, me posting and trying to sort of like get attention for things that I was thinking and doing, right?
Hmm.
Right as again, generative AI is, everybody's kind of, freaking out. And it's not that I was, I don't want to say that I was like, relegated into like some, I wasn't like in the dungeon or anything,
Right.
right? Again, I've been very happy with Advance for a long time. But I was not working with the newsrooms. I was sort of like in the mad scientist corner,
Hmm.
kind of almost like in theoretical land. Whereas this put me like into the organization and like working with the newsrooms and again, it's like I'm almost a little embarrassed because again, I do have colleagues here, right? But it's like it put me in a position where I was able to, I report now directly to the chief innovation officer, right?
Hmm.
Um, and then the CEO, right? And I think most organizations right now are similar to news organizations and others where everybody is taking notice of this and wants to have a plan and wants to feel like they know what's going on and that there's someone at the helm.
Mhm.
And I was kind of put in that position of like, hey, we need some assurance here that like something is going to happen. And really early on, again, just to give a story of like, I was looking at the really big, expensive kind of consulting type companies that will build like one thing for you for 100 grand, and it'll take them like 8 months. I don't know if I should name them, but like they're out there. They're not hard to find, and there's
Mhm.
probably more of them than when I was looking, right? And to be honest with you, I was gonna pull the trigger on it because I hadn't quite found something that would empower me. I'm much more of a get my own hands dirty kind of person when I can. Um, and then a colleague said, "Hey, check this out. I've been doing a little bit of work with MindStudio." Um, and what I really liked about MindStudio was the floor is really low and the ceiling is incredibly high, which is to say,
Mhm.
like, you can get started. Again, you can get started. Truth, I had never done anything with JSON, right? So you don't need to know anything. And I got started immediately, and within, I forget how quickly, but very quickly, I was like, oh, this thing that they're talking about building and taking 6 months to build and charging us 100 grand, like I think I could actually do this. Like at the time, it probably would have taken me a week. I was like, I can do this in a week. Now I could probably build it in, with the AI auto complete from the beginning, right?
Mhm.
So anyways, the point is once I got going with that and I started showing actual results, now the executive team, the entire executive team created a 2 week meeting. Every 2 weeks, I meet with them about what are the newest toolkits, what are the newest cron jobs. They don't really want, again, these are the executives. They don't want all they just want to know that progress is being made. And I'm actually able to give them progress every 2 weeks,
Mhm.
because it doesn't take 100 grand and 4 engineers, right?
Mhm.
And so that switch is, I think that final switch of where they were able to see progress quickly, is what really, again, in terms of the title of this chat, I mean, sure, I'm sure I could do something everybody can do something that could get them fired. I'm sure I could. But in terms of work, qual work, I think I've been able to prove my value, and through MindStudio. And actually, again, the I want more people in advance to learn it more, because I think every person that can start to do stuff with it, will also be able to every 2 weeks, or in even tighter timeframes, be able to show immediate progress on projects.
Mhm. Yeah, that's huge. I mentioned this to you when I asked you to do this and to do this conversation with me for folks, is that like uh, every organization is desperately looking for a David Cohn. This is an obvious fact. Every organization needs this new job function that sits in the office of the CEO, the executive team, that is nimble, that is able to go into any part of the organization in very short period of time, make not just meaningful, but like transformative um, updates to operations, get efficiencies, get scale, bring new services back. Maybe as we talk later, I think one time we chatted that you shared with me there were some services that were discontinued, that there were like no human resources available to maintain in the like the news production, and then you've been able to like bring these features back. That like there's like countless value points like that are needed, and yet the organizations are struggling to figure out who do we put in that seat, right? And when they look at their existing org, unless someone has like gained these skills, they really kind of don't have anybody. And that's why, for example, we're seeing people that like leave our boot camps and then start posting about their new capabilities, their skill set, and then, get hired or get promoted, get recruited by more. And so this is this thing that you've experienced here personally. I'm reporting back that this is obviously the great demand right now for all organizations. Like everybody needs this. People for a while there, a couple of years ago, people were like, everybody needs the chief AI officer. And like you could call it that. I think that's a bit of an ambiguous title. What they really need, like if it's a chief AI officer, it's somebody that does what you do, which is to be able to look at the organization, be able to make choices and rapidly make upgrades to all parts, and then scale a team as you're doing now to do that even faster because of like countless projects in any organization to be able to do that.
And you know what it reminds me of? Again, this is half articulated in my mind. Like I've been in roles before where I'll just say I've been more technically savvy than other people in an organization, and they would reach out to me and say, "Hey, can you help me with this?" And I would, do something, right? But the problem is that was a one-off, right? And then I
Mhm,
became the person that they'd come to every single time that they need something done, right?
mhm,
But now, again, my immediate thought is, well, I'll just create an agent and do it once, and it's not a one-off. It's now a forever in their hands, right?
mhm,
I mean, even something simple. Again, this is just on the top of my head because it's what happened like a week or two ago. A sports reporter, they would get like the brackets. I forget what it's called, like seedings, like who's going to play who, and then the brackets, and and they like to put that and format it in a specific way, and it's in a PDF. And who wants to copy and paste that or try and do it right. And again, in MindStudio I was like, oh, boop 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 boop, go right. And again, in terms of mental tax, it's not, it's not a huge time saver, but it's like the kind of thing that at the end of it you're like, oh my god, I can't believe I had to type this out. But and again, it's the kind of thing where in the past maybe someone would have written a script and they would become like the bottleneck for that to happen in the future. But now I'm able to just sort of like leverage that for everybody. Um, so it's like you don't just solve problems as you go. You are like solving them, permanently
mhm,
going forward,
mhm,
by creating an AI agent that has learned to do that and setting it up for them. And again, I do that within my own work sometimes, just things for relevant for me. And I can imagine, like I said, I am not, I appreciate you saying everyone needs a data phone. They really don't, because it's not like I'm a super genius, right? Like I said, I learned JSON. I've become good at JSON through MindStudio. And then I realized, oh, it's not any more complicated than
mhm,
like HTML, really.
mhm,
Um, but the point being is like I can imagine lots of people in the organization. Again, if they get into that first step, which is pretty low, everybody being able to leverage MindStudio to then 10x their own problems going forward,
mhm.
again, indefinitely.
Yeah, we see both patterns. And by the way, I bring you up frequently as an archetype of this. We see two patterns that work really well, depending on what the organization is. One pattern is what you guys are doing at Advance, which was you were the champion, you took the lead, you built out hundreds of these things, you hired Lewis and other folks, and you trained them, and now you're kind of like scaling the team and doing it. And you sit at the right position, which is very close to executives, because then you can have this like overarching purview and build agents that aren't just for this little function, but say, oh, more people in the organization, more groups are going to need this. I'm going to sort of architect this in this way. And that works, and it's obviously working great for you guys. The other extreme of that pattern is the one you just brought up, which is that a bunch of people in the organization, and they don't have a David Cohn, they just have a bunch of people who've learned to use MindStudio and are just building their own things. And then like you get much faster sort of, prototyping obviously and like solutions being created because there's many people doing it. There's still later, I think, a need for somebody to be at this overarching position to like then look and say, oh, that's awesome. You guys have done
Right.
this. Let's refactor it and do it so
Right.
it's even more
Refactoring. It's
integrated.
it's it's like the templates and things like, or creating a worker that's utility workers and just referencing the utility
Right.
workers for the same things every time.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. And so again, so I think still every organization needs a David Cohn eventually. And it's not about your technical super genius that I'm pointing at. I'm pointing at more at like and you're super humble every time we speak, like it comes through. But like again, if I was to describe what I mean that every organization needs a David Cohn, every organization needs someone who understands how to build AI agents using platforms like MindStudio or N8N, whatever else they like to use, etc. And then has the creativity to be able to sit down with regular business users and look at what they're doing initially and help them understand what might be solutions and kind of go and do that. And then obviously then be able to think more broadly and prioritize and build these things. That's the skill set that's needed. It's not technical prowess, obviously. I think everybody here, certainly everybody's
Yeah,
been
I
to our
think
boot
it is
camp
more
knows.
creativity.
Yeah.
Like or thinking about solutions. I mean, again, one of the things that I really appreciate about my experience with MindStudio, two things. One is there's usually more than one way to sort of accomplish the thing, and it's sort of like thinking about, well, I use the phrase opinionated, right? Like I want an answer that has my opinion of what the right way to get there
Mhm.
is. Um, and then again, this other thing about, the ceiling being really high, it has happened many times where I come across a problem and at first I think, oh, I can't even do this with MindStudio. And then with a little bit of creativity, I was like, actually, by doing this and this, and you guys have done an amazing job, and I've said this to you many times, because I've seen MindStudio grow from like, when there wasn't I think I was there before cron jobs, before scheduled
You
tasks.
were, you were.
Yeah.
You,
And
by
I
the way,
remember thinking
you
like, oh, I couldn't,
inspired.
did I really?
You did. I shared this with you. I think you forgot, but I mean, we wanted to build scheduling for a while, but it wasn't until you were having to build all these cron jobs that we said, let's build this. And I said, like, specifically built it for David. And now
Wow.
all of you guys get to benefit from scheduled
Um,
workflows. Yeah.
every time I've come to places where I feel like I'm hitting a wall, I realize actually no, there's more that I can do here. I mean, again, there was another project. I won't go into the whole details of it, but is kind of falling apart. And I was looking at it, I was like, actually, using global variables. And again, I won't go into exactly the creative solution here, but I think it is to your point about being creative, using the
Mhm.
tools that are there, but using a combination of sort of separating out different workflows and some global variables. I think we're able to save a project that otherwise, a kind of a computer assisted reporting project, a data project that otherwise was just going to hit the fan. And it was just sort of like, it just required, I think, really being forced to again think creatively about the problem.
Mhm. If you were to ask an executive today, like how you know how painful would it be to like rip all of this out and not have this kind of capability anymore? What would they say, over my cold dead body, or like what would they say?
I think we are at that point, actually.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think we could stop what we're doing without it being felt pretty drastically.
Hmm.
Like that I think it would be something, yeah, over my cold dead body type moment.
Hmm.
Um, again, without advances kind of private on some things, so I won't go into specifics, but like the numbers are meaningful.
Hmm.
In terms of what we're able to do now with AI. We've been tracking it month over month in specific markets and
Hmm.
across all the markets, and it is significant and is meaningful and it is growing every month.
Hmm.
And again, I hate to sound so, sort of business about it, right? But like the ROI, right? Like the cost in and the value out. There's no argument that you can make that would be like, oh, this is too expensive. It's like
Hmm.
that's not a conversation.
Which is really weird. Again, you and I are old enough that we've been through other digital transformation waves. And ROI was always this like, oh, well, it's like you'd save 20% or 50%, like it was like that. Like it was rare, like ROI was like so great. But here, again, you struggle and I struggle also of like what term to use to describe it. It's a bit sort of like ludicrous that for like pennies you get, $10,000, or like for an investment of 1 hour of David's time to build an agent. Now, if you calculate the time spent and mental energy spent by people over a year, well, that's more than potentially they're paying you for doing the work, and it's like 1 hour of your time spent on that, and that gets really really crazy. And again, that's why all organizations are just so desperate to find somebody like this because it's the most important position in the company. This is clear. I don't think everybody doesn't see it yet, but to me, it's crystal clear that this is the most important and most needed position in every company. No companies yet have it. This position didn't really exist before, but now it does. And again, you're an exemplar of this. Yeah. Okay. So I want to see if we've got like 15 minutes left. I suspect people have questions. Otherwise, I'll keep asking questions. But if folks have some questions, if you want to like raise your hand and ask the question, or if Luis saw a bunch of questions that we might want to answer, I want to open it up for folks.
And folks, if you have a question, maybe you can raise your hand. The chat was very attentive. Everybody seemed to be listening and not typing very much in the chat earlier.
Okay, that's a good sign. I've got Ryan raising his hand. Hey, Ryan.
Hey guys, awesome chat. Awesome insights and perspectives. So great to hear everybody in the real world getting use cases and implementations. So my question was for you, you touched on stenographers and court reporting. Is that a solution or an agent that you're building custom and specifically for a certain entity? I have a pretty good vertical of multiple stenographers, and I would love to see that. And is it somewhere I can introduce it to someone and kind of walk them through, or was that just something you did for a one-off for someone and you just kind of use that as a use case?
We've built a few of them. It's not like a stenographer, I think, is the person in the court who's like taking the actual like minutes. What we're doing is, this is for the like, again, I'm not their court reporter, right? The 12th Circuit Court of Appeals, right? Like when they put out their opinions, they put out precedential opinions, non-precedential opinions. And again, we're in 11 different states, right? So that means that there's 11 different local Supreme Courts, right? Like the California Supreme Court, et cetera. So we're checking those opinions when they come out. Pennsylvania is the reporter who like wants as much of it as possible, but we also have it in New Jersey, and Michigan, and I think we'll end up doing it in Alabama as well. But so it's just looking at the opinions that come out, and then usually when those opinions come out, there's a PDF, which is like the judge's, legalese explanation of why they're overturning the case or whatever. And so we're just kind of bringing that and summarizing that. So it's not a stenographer, like we're not getting the actual transcript. We do transcript stuff with city council meetings. So we look at like YouTube channels where city council meetings are published, and we then get the transcript of those and do something again similar. That's more like a verbatim, who said what. I hope that's helpful. Again, I built those for purpose. I'm happy to, again, if people want to reach out to me, I can kind of show you the sort of general sketch of how they work, but it's just a MindStudio scheduled job.
Yeah, yeah. If do you have your LinkedIn or something going on in here?
I'll put it in. Yeah, for sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. Hey, Ron.
Hi, thanks, David and Dimitri. I wanted to find out how do you handle cultural pushback? We all know what some of those situations are.
Yeah, I am pretty lucky on a few fronts here. I mean, one, I always come in and I explain like, look, my job is to help you, right? Again, I explain that mental tax, right? And saving time. I'm not building things to replace anybody. It's to, boost you so that you can do the more meaningful work and not have to check Twitter, right? Or, so again, cron jobs is like the perfect selling point. And another thing is, I'm lucky in that the organization is big enough that, and the way it's structured, we have, again, about 11 markets. I sometimes joke that advanced local is like a bunch of Greek city-states. The markets are all kind of independent of each other. It's not, like a sort of hedge fund running it. They all have local. And so I've got 11 different sort of playgrounds, and, some are more eager to play than others. And, jealousy is a very powerful tool. And so like, when one market has success, the other markets are sort of like, well, I don't, and then everybody kind of jumps on board. So we've had a lot of success by just sort of making other parts of the organization see success and be like, maybe I shouldn't have bowed out, and maybe I should reach out and figure out how we can. And again, I'm seeing that all the time. Like, another market has recently shown a lot of vigor, and I know what inspired it. And it's great.
Yeah, by the way, this is a great question, Ron. This is a common um, obviously fear out there with employees whenever somebody shows up and says, "Oh, let's automate some things and let's build you some new tools." Everybody is, get squeamish about that. But as David is reporting in advance, and again, we can corroborate in other organizations, these things tend to turn out great. Like some people are scared until somebody shows up and shows them what this actually is and how valuable it is for them. Then they just want more.
Yeah.
It's an unfounded fear. And so you just got to kind of jump in and let them see what this is. And
Oh, did we lose Dimitri? I'm still here though, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think we lost Dimitri.
Maybe we'll just go to the next question. I think it was Justine. It was either Justine or Matt.
Yeah, I think it was Justine. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Justine.
Thanks for that. It's super interesting. One of the questions,
and that seems to take care of these problems. Yeah.
Dimitri, sorry, we lost you.
I apologize. I've had network issues here all day. It looks like it got me. I'm back. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
We can hear
Okay.
you, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm tethered now, so hopefully this is okay.
Okay.
Hey, Justine.
Hey, one of the categories of use case that you talked about was audience-based use cases. Can
Yeah,
you tell us more
experiences.
about some of the things in that area?
Yeah. The thing I was hinting at before of like this problem that like I think I have a MindStudio creative solution for, that's hopefully going to be forward facing. A lot of those are leveraging the vector databases, which is again in MindStudio, it's like when you upload files kind of thing, it's kind of like a search.
Data sources. Yeah.
Data sources. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. I end up making my own terminology.
All good. Same.
So it's the vector searches, the database searches, and this one wasn't made specifically with MindStudio, but I'll describe something we did for the election in New Jersey and Staten Island. We had the New Jersey governor's election and the Staten Island the mayoral election in New York, and we did this for both the primaries and the actual election, where we put in all the candidates and all of our content related to the candidates, because Staten Island, we're covering the mayoral candidates. For New York, New Jersey, we're covering and so people could ask questions, right? Like, what is their stance on, cannabis, or what is, what do people think of, what is their approach towards health and safety, right? Whatever it might be. And then by searching our previous content, compiling and creating a response, right? So, I mean, a lot of the experiences for audiences so far, I want to get more creative, and I'll tell you one other more creative thing that I think that a lot of them are kind of like plays on search. It's like, what is after search? It's sort of this responsive search. I'll tell you one other thing that I've played with again, MindStudio was great for. And this is one where culturally I think I have to find a way to see if there's adoption for it. It's like my hobby horse. We have removed comments on all of the sites, all of the news sites, because moderating comments, I understand, right? It's a huge hassle, and it's not just a hassle. It's like, mentally, it's like what Dimitri said about being on X, right? It's soul sucking. And what we started doing is we would put up a few forms, right? People could fill out their forms, and rather than those being published, we would then pull those into a database and then have an AI do analysis on it. And it would do analysis like, what is the dominant sentiment? And what are comments that exemplify the dominant sentiment? What's the minority sentiment? And what are comments that best exemplify the minority sentiment? So it's sort of like do analysis on all these comments. And then in a few occasions, we've even published that, almost like a op-ed of the community, right? A community authored op-ed. That's a kind of audience experience that I really want to do more of, and I'm excited about. So playing in different spaces there.
Oh, thanks.
I think it was Matt.
Yeah, hi David. Thank you for directing your attention here. It's been really interesting to hear. And I actually just last week actually did the boot camp for 2 days, but have been always very interested in like AI and different workflows. And it's really amazing, kind of mind blowing, the kind of things that you can build quickly without even having done it much before. So super fascinating to hear how you've incorporated it. And so I'm wondering, and it seems like you have a ton of experience now with this within your organization, but I'm wondering if you have some sort of a framework in mind when you talk to somebody who comes to you or you're looking to help enable them in some way with these workflows, like what kinds of things you might ask them to get at the pain points, as I'm sort of thinking about how I can spin up my AI consultancy myself, trying to work through those frameworks that make things become more clear and buildable.
Totally, totally. And again, like I said, the best things that we have made have been them explaining to me what they need, as opposed to me sort of like deciding, what is or isn't valuable. Often I will start by describing a few things that are possible, right? But I don't want to overly inject. And again, I usually will even share my screen and show them MindStudio and even give them like like we're talking a 5-minute tutorial, but in 5 minutes you can get a good chunk of it across, and that opens up their mind, right? I mean, one of the things, it's a very low floor in my opinion, but most people are still in ChatGPT land where it's like, oh, I have to type something and get a response. I have to type something and get a response. I have to type something and get a response. Once they see that you can type something and get a response that talks to something, that talks to something, that talks to something, and then you get an output, just that is mind blowing for most people. And then they all of a sudden are like, oh, what can I do with that? And it does have a little bit of like I sort of take them through that creative process as well of thinking about like, how can these become variables that then we can use later on? So, it is usually an exploration. I don't know if I have I don't have like a set of questions. It always starts with like, I usually start with what's the most annoying thing that you deal with? And I would say this, most people do have a general sense of like where AI can help. They're like, oh, and it can be something as simple as, again, I never would have thought of this, right? Like, oh, I get emails which are letters to the editor, and I have to publish them. But you can imagine they come with all the carrots, and everybody, someone's sending it from AOL, and someone's sending it from Yahoo, and it's all funky. And I said, oh, that's great. I'll just create an email. You can forward it to that email, and you'll get back a clean version. And this person, it was like I had lifted heartache, years of heartache of them having to like deal with all the funky carrots. But I never would have thought of that, right? So it's just like, hey, take me through your day. Like, what are the things that you do? What are the and I describe mental tax. Again, I think there's maybe better words for it in different industries or whatever, but I feel like that resonates. Like, what are the things that like have a mental tax for you? That like, it's almost like you need to eat a granola bar to feel replenished. And it's not that it's time sucking. It's just like, you can't believe that you had to spend time doing it.
Yeah.
Kind of vibe. And
Totally.
people have those things. They know what those are.
Yeah, for sure. Like in my mind, it's kind of, I know with my ADD neurodivergence that they're the boring things that I just can't make myself do. And those are the kinds of things that I think are extra ripe for the picking.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's super cool to hear that framework. And the way I kind of am starting to conceptualize it is sort of just like wanting to be a fly on the wall for somebody for a day and be like, hey, like, let me just see what you do for the day if I can. And like, I'll try to figure out different ways to help you out. So it's cool that that's kind of what you've come to as well. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah,
Thanks,
hey,
Matt.
folks, I really apologize. My network here today has just gone on the fritz and looks like my tether isn't working either. So I'm logged in from my phone there. So apologize. I've asked Luis to kind of take the lead on this. And so if there are other questions, Luis is there. I'm seeing also, again, I'm kind of, David, concerned about your time, so we can
I'm
end
good,
this.
but yeah, I want to make sure if people do have questions, I can
Okay,
answer.
sounds great. Okay, so I can't see who's the
No
next
worries.
question, so maybe
We've
Luis,
got
you can do it.
we've got a couple more questions for you, David. Ryan, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you again for letting me up. You kind of touched on it, right? That the education incline is pretty steep for people that have never seen it. And the incline goes down once they do see it, like David was just explaining, right? You show it to them, you just actually show them the MindStudio, and then the light bulbs start going off. So I'd like to ask you a little of the moreover. I've had an IT company for decades, and I have a trust factor with a lot of people, and they come to me for everything, right? If you can fix their computer, you can fix anything technical, right? So they ask me everything. My question to you is, when you start to go into this process with people, are you, I guess I'm really ultimately asking, like, how do you end up charging people, or how do you figure out, we don't want to work for free, but we're in a kind of a state right now where this is so new to so many businesses and people that are unaware can happen. So I'm kind of asking you, like, how do you go about that? Do you just say, hey, let me show you a bunch of stuff and kind of get their trust? Because not a lot of people are just going to be like, here's my credit card, charge me, let's go, I trust you, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'll admit part of that is hard for me to answer because I don't charge people, right? I mean, I work for the company and I build these for other people in the same company, and so I'm not asking them to give their money necessarily, but I am asking them of like. I explain the cost. For example, like deep research, which I don't know if that's a template now or where, like that is one that, again, very popular. But when I show that to people, I say, by the way, this does cost that run, can cost anywhere from $1 to $3. Like you should, I want people to use it, but I want you to be judicious in how you use it. But ultimately, it's not their money, right? So, for me, it's much more about what is the ROI internally to the organization, right? Like whether or not they can explain the justification for why it's helpful. Again, I'll use TikTok as an example. For all the obvious reasons, as a news organization, we need to get more content on TikTok, and the reporters are hesitant. They don't know, TikTok is a totally different language, quite literally sometimes. And so we created like a TikTok script adapter, and it gives them bullet points, a word for word verbatim script that they could read, and then even like, video editing suggestions, like what should be the text overlay and, maybe scenes and music. Just having that is enough to get them off of zero. And just getting them off of zero, now all of a sudden they're able to go. And for, I don't know how much that run costs. Maybe it costs 20 cents. To get someone, off of zero towards making a TikTok video is immeasurably, has a huge ROI.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that's kind of where I was going, David. Thank you. Is, just different verticals that I work with, and it's like, God, I can help you in 100 different ways. But getting into that door to do that, not work for free for a week, but find that happy medium of, hey, let me get to work a little bit here and show you a few things. That's what I'm trying to kind of conquer myself, is how do you really monetize that so I'm not working for free, but at the same token, show them the value so the light bulb does go off. That's where I'm at. So I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan. Ron, you have a question?
Yes, please. David, there has been great publicity and a lot of motivation. And I know in my own business, it's wonderful to do these workforce level pilot projects down at the individual workflow or team workflow. But there's been a lot of bad publicity also in the big press, like HBR and McKinsey reports and stuff, about the fact that there's very few strategic ROI impact cases. And I think that comes probably because most of the work is being done with AI down at the workforce level, rather than plotting out strategic workflows that impact strategic ROI.
Mm-hmm.
Has your organization done any work at that level of strategic, working backward from strategic objectives?
Yes. And this is again where I am lucky. I'll give you, I'm going to mess up the metric. It's called content views per subscriber. I forget exactly the acronym that they use, but we know, for example, that in Oregon, in the Oregonian, their business stories perform better. They get more subscribers per content page for business stories than any other market. Not sure why. That's just how they're doing it. Sports, especially high school sports, we know has a higher, again, content view per subscription created. I forget the acronym exactly, but so one, I know which of our types of content turn into real money, right? Because for us, it's subscribers or page views, right? I mean, page views, and then there's page views in dollars per, per milli, per thousand, right? But actually, subscribers is really the name of the game for us. And by looking at those, I'm able to say, well, if we know content page view per subscriber, if we can increase the content page view, even if that does drop a little bit, which inevitably does, if you increase the content view, views by 1 million, your content views per subscriber is going to go down a little bit. You got 1 million new page views, but even if it stays consistent, right? We're able to say, if we get 1,000, I'm making up these numbers, 500 subscribers per 1 million content views, and AI got us 1 million content views this month. That's 500 subscribers in theory, right? So we do work backwards from things that we know have real business goals, and that is important. In the early stages, it wasn't. Like in the early stages, I was just like throwing spaghetti, and trying to make people happy, right? To the question of like, how do you earn people over? It's like, give someone something that makes their day, that just like, now they're like, what else you got for us? And I'm like, well, let's talk about the business reporting in Oregon, because that's seems to be pretty lucrative for us, right? So that's kind of how we approach it.
Do you have a structured methodology, like a balanced scorecard or OKRs, something like that?
It's OKRs. Again, this is where I manage lots of different stakeholders, and there's a whole team that does subscriber studies and knows those counts, and again uses an acronym that I always mess up, that I've been trying to repeat here. And basically, like when I see things that I want to work on, I check with them, and I'm like, hey, does this make sense? And like, oh yeah, these we'll be able to track the success of them over here. So I'm not degrading them when I say bean counter. I mean that in the most loving way. I'm not the bean counter, but there are really good ones, and I talk to them, and we have conversations about what are the projects, what are the things I'm looking at, and they're able to say like, actually that one, is more for, again, to make somebody happy, which we do sometimes, especially if it's like, 1 cent a day. It's like, sure, I'll do it, right? And some of them are that cheap, right? But if it's more meaningful commitment, then we sort of have conversations about, is the ROI there?
Thanks, David.
Thanks, David. So I'm gonna land this thing in lieu of Dimitri's internet connection, but it has just been fascinating to hear from you and your experience building all of these hundreds of agents, how you've bucketed them together. And so thank you so much for taking time out of your day to come and speak with all of us. Just one last question for you before we wrap up. Any final thoughts or pieces of wisdom that folks watching can take home with them as we wrap this thing up?
I mean, again, when it comes to MindStudio specifically, I have been very impressed at the rate at which you all have iterated and really responded. I think I saw Sean in here at one point. He's a killer, the CTO at MindStudio. And I'd say this again, I have really come to the conclusion of the floor is very low, and so when I show people, they're able to understand it pretty quickly. But the ceiling is incredibly high. And every time I think I've hit a ceiling, it turns out that actually MindStudio can do even more than I thought. So I think getting on is really easy, and then it's just about like, once you're at a place where you're like, oh, there's like 12 ways I can solve that problem, you're like, oh, I'm really starting to master the way that this thing functions, right? So again, and I'd say this, despite Dimitri's great praise of every minute of my day, I do try and make myself open and accessible. I'm happy to talk with folks anytime. So feel free to reach out. Yeah, be well.
Thanks, David. And thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.